Coming up, we prepare for the start of the 2022 NFL season. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Game to Game NFL. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. We are going to take a look at all of the week one action by checking in with the people that know these teams the best, our Locked On NFL hosts. We start out with the Steelers, who start their season for the first time since 2005 without Ben Roethlisberger behind center. Mitchell Trubisky will get a start, and a lot of other promising young talent is hopefully going to help Pittsburgh with this transition year. Locked On Steelers breaks down what you can expect in week one.
The Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely must stop the run and what the Bengals want to do with Joe Mixon to win their first game of the season on Sunday. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. A lot of people are going to talk about Jamar Chase. A lot of people are going to talk about Joe Burrow. A lot of people are going to talk about how the passing offense of the Bengals can take off at any moment. But a lot of this gets started because of the balance that the Bengals were able to establish all through last year in their offense. If you go look at their best games, a lot of their best games came when Joe Mixon was running the ball effectively, and then Joe Burrow's success was built off of that. The Steelers had the worst rushing defense in the NFL last year. They think that they've beefed it up. I asked Mike Tomlin about how he feels about his linebackers. He spoke very highly of Miles Jack and Devin Bush. They'll need to play to a high level, but it especially goes with the defensive line. If the Steelers' defensive line, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Larry Ogunjobi, and Alex Highsmith, if that front can not only limit the run, keep Joe Mixon to around 50 to 60 yards, and then get after the quarterback, that's their ticket to setting the right tone and putting themselves in position to pull off another week one upset just like they did against the Buffalo Bills. For more on your Pittsburgh Steelers, be sure to check out the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday, free and available on all podcast platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cincinnati's going to have a very tough task as they try to get back to the big game and hopefully come out as champions this time around. After a fantastic 2021, there is nothing but upside for Joe Burrow and company going into 2022. Locked On Bengals has more on the season opener.
Will the Bengals' revamped offensive line be able to keep Joe Burrow upright? Hi again, everyone. I'm James Erpine from the Locked On Bengals podcast, and that is the question going into Sunday's season opener against the Pittsburgh Steelers at Paycor Stadium. The Bengals went out and added Alex Cappa, Collins, Ted Karras, free agency. They drafted Cordell Volson, the fourth-round rookie, will start at left guard. Will their upgrades in the trenches be enough to contain TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, two high-end pass rushers for the Steelers, plus Cam Hayward in the middle? It's the question that everyone in Cincinnati will be asking going into Sunday's matchup. For more on the Bengals, make sure you check out the Locked On Bengals podcast every Monday through Friday. Jake Lesko and myself, we're the only daily Bengals podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's make it or break it time for Tua Tagovailoa as a new coach and a speedy new weapon in Tyreek Hill will give him every chance to succeed this season in South Beach. Locked On Dolphins previews a week one tilt against the Patriots in Miami that history tells us looks like it might be a guaranteed win.
Success on the ground is the key for the Miami Dolphins in week one. I'm Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. The Dolphins spent significant resources this offseason, both in the coaching staff and on the field, to try to overhaul a ground game that has given the team nothing but fits over the course of the past 5 seasons. But when the team has had success, ironically enough, it's been against the New England Patriots, including running back Duke Johnson having success in the Dolphins' Week 18 victory at Hard Rock Stadium to close last season. With Matt Breida and Chase Edmonds now in the backfield and Teron Armstead and Connor Williams manning the front, the Dolphins must find consistency running the football to keep their offense on schedule and ensure they're not asking too much of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa.
A ton of injuries last year for Baltimore made them look like pretty much a hot mess, while the Ravens' defense is likely going to stack up better in 2022. Lamar Jackson will have to get used to not having Hollywood Brown around on his roster. Fortunately, they start off against the Jets, which should be an easy win. We check in with Locked On Ravens.
The Baltimore Ravens must start fast in order to beat the New York Jets in Week 1 of the 2022 season. I'm Kevin Ostreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens, and Baltimore's been an extremely dominant Week 1 team in 3 of the past 4 Week 1 matchups they've had, and I think they're going to try to get off to that fast start here against the Jets, and I think in order to do that, they can establish their ground game, and then if the Jets decide to stack the box, they can punish them with the play action that they can use with multiple tight end sets. They can use some of their receivers in that as well. Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, James Proche, even newly signed Demarcus Robinson. And on defense, if the Ravens can eliminate the Jets' ground game, make them one-dimensional by just throwing the football, the Ravens can hopefully force some 3-and-outs, get the ball back to their offense, and we'll start to see maybe a trend of them trying to run the clock down, dominating the time of possession battle. So if they're able to start fast, get out to a 10, 14-point lead and eliminate that Jets ground game, I think that they'll be in good shape to win this game overall. For more on the Baltimore Ravens, be sure to follow the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Jets are going to roll out Joe Flacco against his old team in Week 1 as they wait patiently for the return of second-year quarterback Zach Wilson. Locked On Jets has more on what could be an ugly beginning to the 2022 campaign for New York.
The New York Jets must stop the run in order to beat the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. I'm John, the host of the Locked On Jets podcast, and the Ravens present the Jets with a challenge. Baltimore has an unconventional offense based on the run, led by the dynamic Lamar Jackson. The Jets are coming off a season where they had arguably the worst defense in the league. They're looking for a big improvement this year. They made a number of offseason upgrades, both through free agency and the draft. However, most of these upgrades were to shore up the pass defense. On paper, the Jets do not look like they have a great run defense. Baltimore is going to challenge them. The Jets will need a big performance up front by their defensive linemen, led by Quinnen Williams and John Franklin Myers. C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams will also need to play well at the linebacker position, and the Jets will probably need to dedicate an extra safety to the box. That's where Jordan Whitehead will come in. For more on the New York Jets and this weekend's big matchup, be sure to check out the Locked On Jets podcast every Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Coming up, we'll continue our look around the league for Week 1 of the NFL season. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL. This edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform out there. With NFL season kicking off, Sleeper is climbing the charts with over 4 million users. In addition, they have just launched 22 new features, including over-unders integrated into fantasy, the first sports contest game built into the fantasy experience. Not only can you enter a contest via over-under itself, but you can also do so through your fantasy league's matchup screen. It's really simple. First, in any sport, you choose 2 or more players that you like. Then you pick the over-under, for example, rushing yards in football or number of points in basketball. Then you choose the amount of money you want to enter into that contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere between doubling your money and 20 times the amount of money that you put in. It's the only app where you can join with your friends in the contests and play with each other. You can write it all out together. Join our listeners group on Sleeper at sleeper.com/lockedonbets, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. Again, go to sleeper.com/lockedonbets. You will get $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Matt Ryan is looking to make a good first impression for Colts fans in Week 1, while the Texans are attempting to move forward from Deshaun Watson and a disastrous 2021 season as a whole. Locked On Colts and Texans joins us with more.
The Indianapolis Colts must start out hot and jump on their opponent early and often in order to break their Week 1 curse and to take down the Houston Texans on Sunday. This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of the Locked On Colts podcast.
And you are absolutely right, Jake Arthur. I mean, we are looking at a Colts team that has lost the opening day game for the last couple seasons. It has been an emphasis of this team all offseason. They have come out with new plans for training camp, with a new quarterback, with new defensive players. They're doing everything in their power to not only win a bunch of games this season, but especially win this Week 1 game. Now they get a very vulnerable opponent in the Houston Texans at Week 1. So the Colts need to come out firing, and they need to show the whole world that they can actually win in Week 1.
Yeah, I think what's it been like 8, 9 years, something. It's been quite a while. But for more on your Indianapolis Colts and this weekend's big matchup, be sure to check out the Locked On Colts podcast every Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The toughest division in the NFL will likely deliver one of the best games of week one. Derek Carr takes his friend and all-world wide receiver Davante Adams to LA to take on the Chargers as they look to make the jump this season with Justin Herbert leading that charge. Locked On Chargers and Locked On Raiders preview the divisional clash.
After losing to the Raiders in excruciating fashion Week 18 of last season, the Chargers have revenge on their mind. In order to exact that revenge, in Week 1 of the 2022 season, they're going to have to get constant pressure on Derek Carr. This is David Drogemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and Derek Carr is simply a different quarterback when you get pressure in his face. Last season, when pressured, Derek Carr threw 5 touchdowns to 9 interceptions and only completed about 53.8% of his passes. If you want to limit the effectiveness of dangerous weapons like Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, and of course, the new Davante Adams, then you got to get pressure on the quarterback's face. For more on your Los Angeles Chargers and this weekend's big matchup, be sure to check out the Locked On Chargers podcast Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In order for the Raiders to head to LA, SoFi Stadium, take on the Chargers and come away with the victory on Sunday, the Raiders are going to have to find a way to protect Derek Carr. I'm your boy Q, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast, for everything you need to know about the Silver and Black leading up to this Week 1 matchup in LA versus division rival Chargers. Make sure you check out the Locked On Raiders podcast Monday through Friday. Wherever you can find your podcast, you'll find it. Make sure you make it your first listen each and every day. The Raiders brought in a lot of new weapons led by Davante Adams, big trade they made with the Green Bay Packers. That's Derek Carr's college teammate. They've already established a lot of chemistry in training camp and look like they're ready to go. But before Derek Carr to be able to get that ball to Davante Adams, he's going to have the big uglies up front protect him. That's going to be Jermaine Illuminor at the right tackle position, Lester Cotton at the right guard. So there's a lot of new right there. Andre James, second-year center, he's holding that spot down. John Simpson, he's getting another crack at being the starting left guard. And then Colton Miller, old reliable, a former first-round pick there at the left tackle position. So that offensive line is going to have to gel. Josh McDaniels, the new play caller, is going to have to dig into his bag of tricks, be able to help out that offensive line a little bit as they're trying to gel, especially early on in the season. Of course, don't forget with the Chargers, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, those bookend edge rushers are going to try to get after Derek Carr and take his lunch money. And it's up to that offensive line and Josh McDaniels to be able to protect Derek Carr to the best of their ability. If they want to head back to Las Vegas with a 1-0 record, to be able to do that against the Chargers on Sunday, it's going to be all about protection. The guys up front got to protect Derek Carr. For more on all things Raiders, make sure, again, you tune in to the Locked On Raiders podcast Monday through Friday.
Last year's #1 seed in the AFC is hoping to repeat that regular season success in 2022, but they will have to do it with some new pieces on both sides of the football. Locked On Titans knows Tennessee still has what it takes to beat the Giants in Week 1, though.
If the Tennessee Titans want to kick off the 2022 regular season with a victory over the New York Giants, the defense will have to create turnovers. My name's Tyler Rowland, host of the Locked On Titans podcast. It's no secret that New York Giants starting quarterback Daniel Jones has been a turnover machine throughout his career, averaging 1.29 turnovers per game. The Titans will need to make that trend continue, and the defense will need to get 2 turnovers on Sunday, not only taking away scoring opportunities from the Giants, but giving the Tennessee Titans offense easy scoring opportunities in return. If the Titans can take away the ball from the Giants and set their offense up for easy scores, they can be victorious in Week 1. For more on your Tennessee Titans and this weekend's big game, check out the Locked On Titans podcast Monday through Friday, free and available on all platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Russell Wilson already has Broncos Nation ready to ride into the season, and he'll start in a pretty familiar place, Seattle. The new Broncos quarterback has to go into his old home for game #1 in a new uniform. And Locked On Broncos breaks down how Wilson and Denver could leave Seattle winners in Week 1.
Denver Broncos must avoid the emotion of Russell Wilson's return to Seattle if they want to come out on top for a victory on Monday Night Football. I'm Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos, and for the Denver Broncos to come out on top on Monday Night Football against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 1, the return of Russell Wilson to Seattle is a huge storyline, but for Russell Wilson, he says he's not caught up in the emotions of it. However, with the electric atmosphere that we know that Seattle possesses with the 12th man, Russell Wilson, the anticipation, a lot of Seahawks fans said that they've planned to boo Russell Wilson. Will that be enough to throw the Broncos off track? Now, for a team that has not played any of the starters in the preseason, this will be a big test. Can the offense come out firing? Can the defense get after Geno Smith? And the Seahawks, if they can do that, they will come out on top when they Week 1 showing against the Seahawks. Make sure you check out the Lockdown Broncos podcast every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts in audio format, or whether you watch us on YouTube. We appreciate you so much. Part of the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NFL. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you go check out your team's Locked On podcast and also subscribe to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.